Welcome back to another episode of the Experts in Fire podcast. I'm Mike Vennard, your host, and with me today will be Randy Mowry, and we're going to be discussing what to know before buying your gas fire pit burner, part 2. Let's get into it. Hey Randy, how you doing today, man?
Hey Mike. Oh, I'm good. How are you today, sir?
I'm awesome. You know what? I appreciate in life that you call me sir. I think it shows our age, to be honest with you, because I do the same thing. Folks look at you nowadays, especially my sons are in their 20s. You know, I know you have an older daughter, and when you say sir or ma'am, they look at you like, who are you talking to? And I'm like, don't worry. It comes with age.
Exactly.
Today, Randy, we are going to be really picking up where we left off on the last episode. We did an episode on just gas fire pit burners and the pans. We didn't get a chance to talk a lot about pans, but we did talk about the difference between stainless burners, tube burners, basically, and the brass burners or jet burners, because now we do have those burners that are available in stainless as well. You know, we talked a little about warranty. We talked about, how they function and that type of stuff. I'm not going to recap the whole show. If you want to listen to it, you can go back and listen to episode 1 of this group of discussions. But today we wanted to really jump into, we didn't get to talk about shapes and sizes. And I know we have an entire group of designers who that we work with. We have a lot of designers that we work with out there, and just help educate what's the difference, what's the abilities, I think would be a better way to say it, to shape stainless tube burners versus brass burners. So let's just start there, Randy. I know you do a lot of custom projects. You have a lot of big builders out there. So educate us, Randy. When it comes to stainless steel tube burners, what kind of shapes can I use?
What kind of shape can't you use? How's that? So it does come up quite frequently, actually, especially when you are talking about big commercial jobs and residential projects. So tube stainless steel burners, they have a ton of standard shapes. Just these manufacturers just have quite a few standard shapes. And what I mean by that is they have like your round burners, your double and triple ring round burners. But then they also have half moon burners or star shaped burners, S burners, just think like the letter S. However, the other cool thing about it is if I have a corporation that contacts me, and let's just use Woodland Direct, for example. I get a call and, hey, you know what? We want to do something Woodland Direct. We want the WD into a burner. Well, we can create that WD as a burner, those two letters in a fire pit burner, in that stainless steel material, and have flame coming up out of it, like we'll just say at the front entrance of the building. Or if somebody has it's a residential project and they want something that's more shaped like a basketball, like the black lines you see in a basketball. And maybe they're just going to put some clear glass on it, just enough to see that basketball looking burner. We can build it like that. So it's pretty unlimited as far as what you can do to weld the stainless steel together and get these holes drilled into it and have flame come up out of it. Water, for example, we do a lot, stainless steel water features where that flame is coming up out of the water in different multiple shapes. So a lot of uses. So it's pretty unlimited what you can do with the stainless steel tube systems and creating different designs and shapes out of that, whether it's a homeowner or commercial property.
Right. So if a designer was stepping into the situation, and I'm thinking, I don't want to make it seem like I'm only speaking to designers, because for a lot of folks at home even, they're sitting back and they're looking around their yard and they're trying to come up. We're all designers. Instagram has made us all designers, right? But really,
absolutely,
it's ideas that we pick up, and then really what we do is we translate that to either a landscape architect or to someone who's going to do that work, and to be able to educate yourself, and then if you're a landscape architect listening as well, to help understand where some of these folks are coming from. When we talk about custom, we've done some really big projects, but there are a lot of just I'm thinking right now, Randy, you can get circles, you can get half moons, like you said, you can get S shapes, you can get just about anything. You can get squares, you can get rectangles, you can get H burners, all of that out of tubes. Some of the impact to flame, however, is the longer those runs are, the less gas is getting down to the ends. So there are some things that you're going to need to be aware of. There are ways to overcome that. And that's why you would call a guy like Randy to talk through that and how you would overcome that to make sure that your flames stay nice and have good size to them. But I think the point you're making is, hey, this is going to work. In our last episode, though, we did talk about when it comes to the stainless steel tube burners, there is a lifespan to them. And there's just a period of time before those are going to need to be replaced. We do have one manufacturer that offers lifetime warranty on their standard stuff. So that is a lot of times why when we're talking with someone and they're doing something custom, that's why we will, at times, not always, because I know you do a lot of jobs that are custom, fire and water jobs as well, with stainless burners. But we'll also discuss why the jet or the brass version is important as well. So talk to me about the brass version and, what kind of shapes and sizes can you do with those?
So the brass burners, they still do have like your linear designs, whether it's an H burner, single tube burner. They have versions of a star style burner. The brasses are a little bit different with the basic design of the vertical jets that come out of them. There are some, we'll call it maybe some limitations of some of the designs as far as the configurations with those brass burners. And the brass burners just overall tend to have a little bit higher BTU output per burner versus a stainless steel burner of the same size because of the port system that they use on those systems. So sometimes it will make more sense to build something out of a custom based on the length because of possibly what we have BTU wise available versus a brass tile unit. But there are definitely some customization that can be done with the brass. I've done custom brass burners that are the overall inside dimension of a fire pit is like, 8 to 10 feet. And we customize the burner in a manner so that we do a progressive flame enhancement, meaning we'll have like 5,000 BTU ports on the outside edges and then carry that into like 10,000 BTU ports in the middle so that we're increasing that flame size as we're getting closer to the center of the fire pit. So they have their own unique styles of customization where, with like if we're using an H burner, we can think in the same method. We could start with lower BTU ports on the outsides and then progressively come in and increase that flame. So they still do have some shapes. There are just maybe some limitations on what we can build because it's actually, with a lot of that brass, it's solid brass piping. Think in terms of black pipe that you would use for gas lines inside somebody's house. Similar to that, but it's solid brass. So we're not bending it as much as we can with stainless steel. So there's definitely a little bit more versatility with stainless than there is with the brass when it comes to some of the bends that we can do. But there's still some unique designs out there and still really no limitations on size. I mean, I think that the fire pit that I did, it was like 1 million BTUs or something like that. Maybe just a little bit under. So yeah, so there's a lot of gas there. So we can definitely do some unique sizes. Some squares, octagon shapes. So there's definitely quite a few still unique shapes that are done with the brass. They're just different than what's offered in a stainless steel version.
You have fire-related questions, and we have answers. You can email us your questions at podcast@woodlanddirect.com or give us a call at 586-221-3638. We would love to be able to answer them right here on the Experts in Fire podcast. Yeah, they go together different, and then the ports are different as well. However, if you think about it spatially, let's elevate above the fire pit itself. If I have a circle tube, let's take the outer tube, right? And each spot, there is a hole drilled. We just We just kind of marked where those were. You're still trying to create the exact same thing with hard piping. So you can still create a spot where those ports are pushing flame up in a circular pattern. It's just a straight line kind of way to have to get those ports to that spot, if that's making sense at all. It really works in my head, man.
No, I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. I know what you're trying to say for sure, but yeah.
Yeah, so it's very interesting the way these things work, and our manufacturers do a lot of good work with the stainless side or the brass side, depending on what you want. But I think really, if you're a designer, or if you're a homeowner, or if you're a landscape architect that's looking at, man, this is just a piece, and this is what we work with our landscape architects on. This is just a piece of the backyard versus, no, this is the central gathering place. I mean, we did one huge build out at a vineyard in California. It was a monster, but it was the central place. I mean, they had chairs going on forever around this big circular fire pit, and that was their request. This needs to be the central point. So we need to know, really, what are you thinking of? Is this just a nice little gathering place for 3, 4, 5 chairs? Then there's a BTU setting for that, and we can help you walk through that. Is this the nope? When we build out this whole space, we want everyone's attention to be here. Well, we can work there as well. But you brought up a good point. I want you to speak to that because I know there's some technicals to it. BTUs become very, very important in the discussion. So when we're talking whether it's a backyard effect or it is the central point, how would you walk me through that conversation, Randy?
No, and it's a good point. It's a very common question. And when I chat with, like, whether it's a homeowner or a landscape architect, if they don't have something, I always even mention to them, even if they draw it on a piece of paper very generically and messy little picture, take a picture of it, send it to me, so we have an idea if they're looking for a specific design and shape and size. Once we start talking about shape and size, it's my first question is usually, is your gas line ran for this fire feature already? The important part of that is because if I have and it's happened many times where I will have a client that will call and they were looking at something that requires, let's say, 400,000 BTUs, and we find that the gas line is ran indeed, and it is only ran for 150,000 BTUs. Well, that ultimately eliminates the burnout that they were looking at in regards to any kind of flame presentation. So the BTU part of it is very important. If we can catch it on the front end, meaning the gas hasn't been ran yet, and we want to get this information to the plumber so that they can actually determine first if the size of the meter is good to supply that. Because in a lot of cases, a meter may have to be upgraded if somebody's doing a whole new backyard part of it, and this fire feature is just maybe like the last element because they did an in-ground pool. So we put a 500,000 BTU pool heater in, and then they added barbecue grills, and all of a sudden, you know what? We have this empty spot here. We want to do a fire feature now. And so that sometimes it might be the after effect, and the gas has already ran for these other elements, and then they want to do this fire feature. Now the BTU is really, really important because now maybe they don't have the meter size for it, and they have to upgrade the meter to be able to do that. So the BTU is really important based on the burner that somebody wants to use. And that's whether it's residential and or commercial, because I can't tell you how many contractors are working on commercial jobs and the gas lines are already ran. They've gotten there maybe on the back end. They want a 20-foot linear fire pit burner, but they only have enough gas for 10. So there's a lot to consider there when it comes to the BTUs. And what I'm talking about, folks, is that BTU is important really for your flame presentation. If you have a couple 100,000 BTUs and we're looking at a burner that requires 350, just using a round number, let's say if you had the full 350, you were going to get 16 inches of flame height, and you're 50% of that, you're going to be down to like in that 6 to 8 inch range if you don't have enough of the BTUs for the burner. So that's the important part of it.
Now, and you're absolutely right, Randy. We work with folks on that all the time. If you're listening out there and you realize, uh-oh, I've already got the gas line run, give us a call. We can definitely help with it. Presentation, again, if you want huge flames, we might be in a little bit of a situation, but you shrink that burner down some, you get a little better pressure out of it, and you get the full flame effect, you're still going to be able to accomplish a beautiful fire feature. And we have some tricks as well in terms of, Randy, you already mentioned the 5,000 BTUs versus 10,000 BTU jets that one of our manufacturers has. The ability to go, okay, we can still span that across there. You are going to give up some flame height, but you're still going to have gorgeous presentation. Randy and I could sit here and talk about flame height all day long, because there are scenarios where I want to turn down the flame. You know what I mean? I don't want 16-inch flame all the time, or maybe
Yeah, right. Exactly.
it's just too much.
Yeah, they'll put a variable valve on it.
Exactly. So there are a lot of different scenarios that we've seen, and we can help you with if you're out there. But the most important point that Randy's making here is, please be cognizant that this is something that you need to be aware of. No, you have to get into the plans before all the work starts to get done, because once concrete's laid, or you've laid block down and you've got the patio all set up, you're not going to want to pull all that up to run a different size gas line. That just kills everything.
Yeah, definitely not going to do that. So yeah, that's why it's important to, if you can get in on the front end, fantastic. And if you can't, and we're talking about hard piping gas lines, folks, not something that's more portable like a propane tank. Just wanted to clarify that, because that is a huge difference. We're really underground hard piping is what I've been talking about in regards to the gas line.
Speak to that though, Randy. There's only so many BTUs that can come out of a propane tank. So some of our listeners and designers and hardscapers might not be aware how many BTUs come out of a propane tank. Your standard 20-pound tank.
Yeah, your standard barbecue grill tank, you're going to be in that like 430, 440,000 BTU range. So that is going to also limit the size of the burner that a person uses, because that, a couple things there while we're chatting about that is, that tank also needs to be within 12 feet of the fire pit. 12 foot is about the max, because you're going to just have way too much pressure drop for that tank to be able to support the burner. And then on the burner side, you're really going to be limited on the size of the burner. Ideally, you want to really stay under about 80,000 BTUs. If you figure 80,000 BTUs is really only going to give you about 5 hours of usage on a 5-gallon tank. So you definitely can't hook up anything that's like, 400,000 BTUs to a 5-gallon propane tank, because it would just, you wouldn't get any flame. It would just suck it, freeze the tank, and maybe even trip the regulator. So you'd all just be standing there going, what just happened?
Hey, you don't know the number of people who will call us and say, hey, I hooked this thing up and now my tank isn't working. Yeah, you froze it.
Yeah, exactly.
You're trying to serve more BTUs than your tank can handle. So.
Right, yeah. So there's some limitations there when we're using a portable style of propane tank.
So, Randy, I mean, we talked a little about shapes and sizes, a lot of options available out there. Please give us a call if you have questions. We have a lot of options on our website as well that you could just scroll through. Big conversation about BTUs. Is basically in the planning stages. You need to be having discussions so that you know what you need to service. And that's the problem. They'll have the discussions and they'll get it all laid out. And then they call and say, here, we need this. And the first question we have is, well, how many BTUs do you have, or what's the pipe size you have coming to that particular fire feature? And if they've run it already, they may not match up. So make sure you incorporate us. We know that, I know, Randy, you have projects you're working on that are 6 months, 8 months out, because all the other pieces need to be put into place, but you've been incorporated into the discussion way before time, so they know what size gas line they're going to need to run, how that thing's going to plumb up. We didn't even talk about on fire features like that. Is it going to stem up at the center? Is it going to stem up on one end? Where is the gas going to be fed into this feature? We got so many things we could talk about.
Yeah, there's so many different things, and just to touch on real quick as we're talking about BTUs is this is definitely something that you want to contact your local professional gas plumber. Woodland Direct, we don't do any recommendations for gas pipe sizing. There's too many variables there. We leave that to the professionals that are on site. And ideally, if you're on the front end of your project, after we've had a discussion about what you're looking to do on your fire feature, anyone on my team will provide you with the BTUs that you're going to need based on the product that you've chosen. And that's the information that you will pass on to your gas plumber. On the flip side of that, if the gas line is already ran, you get with your gas plumber, and they have a means of being able to hook up what's called a manometer and some tools to calculate the end use BTU of what you're going to have at that fire pit. So it's a calculation they can do for you and give you that information on the BTU, so that when you do call, you can say, hey, this is what I have available. This is what I was thinking. What can I do? And then we'll fit you with the correct product.
Absolutely. Shout out to all our pros out there. We do ask that you use a local pro for these types of jobs. This isn't something you want to do on your own. Not to mention there are local codes that we run into all the time, Randy, that we go, wow, that's an actual code in your area. Working with those pros, because there are codes that are made at times that may not even be relevant anymore. But I'm not going to be aware of every code out there. That's what your local pro does, and they do an excellent job at it. So we tip our hats to our local pros. Randy, we haven't even gotten a chance to talk ignition systems yet. And I just want to throw into the end of this here, because we need to bring this to a close. Ignition systems are important to think about beforehand as well, because there are so many variables that play into.
Once again, there's quite a few variables. There's quite a few options when it comes to controls. Real quick, I'm gonna jump back real quick. We get a lot of questions on why do I need a flat pan versus one that has like the lip on it, considered like a bowl pan. So just real quick to describe them, the main difference of the two is this. Your bowl style pan, think of a bowl. It has a lip around it, typically like 1.25 inches. And when if you have a 36-inch inside dimension fire pit, you go with a bowl style. You can have that stainless steel lip sit right on the very top. It drops down in place, and you're good to go. It supports your media and everything. Flat pan are, a lot of times folks don't want to see that stainless steel lip on the very top, and they want it to be a little bit more recessed. Flat pans come into play there, where they can drop that thing down and have it maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 inches below the very top surface, their media, and a nice capstone on top of it. So those are really the two main differences in the styles of a bowl pan versus the flat pan.
We get a lot of people ask, do I really need a pan? And really, a lot of it revolves around media, but it also revolves around keeping your valves and your plumbing accessible, because this is going to need to be serviced, and it should be serviced annually. A startup and a shutdown in the state of Michigan. In other areas of the country, maybe once a year. But when you start burying stuff, and you just pop up that little, hey, I got a little thing right here. I got a little pipe sticking up out of the ground, and I'm going to screw this on there, and hey, we got fire. That just...
And from from a gas standpoint, natural gas, propane, we've talked about stainless steel burners in previous episodes, and air mixers. Anytime you use propane, whether it's hard piped and or a portable tank, and you're using a stainless steel burner, you are going to have a pan, because you have to have an air fuel mixer underneath that stainless steel pan that draws air in to be able to mix with that liquid propane. And you also have to have ventilation in your fire pit, in the sides of your fire pit. And so whether it's a drop-in bowl pan or a flat pan, it is necessary for a propane fire pit. Ventilation is very important as well in allowing air to escape. Kind of reiterating our previous episode, propane is heavier than air, so what propane does is it pools. So if you don't have ventilation in the bottom side of that fire pit, that gas could just build up underneath that. It has no place to go. And if for any reason that burner blows out, or even during the process of burning, if you have any kind of leak or just gas getting in there, that's really a potential of something exploding. So it is important. The pan is a must for propane, definitely a must. We always like to see a pan, to be quite honest, for that airflow, for all the reasons that Mike mentioned, for your valves there underneath those pans.
And not to mention simplicity, Randy, when it comes to your media. And I know it's an added cost, and I could just get bags of sand and put sand in there and bury everything and then put media on top of that. When you're talking about simplicity of putting a shallower, I'll use the word shallower base of media and still get the same look, super valuable, right? Because that media is probably the more costly portion of your fill, depending on how big of a space you have. Not to mention water. One of the big, I think it was in the last episode, that's really all we talked about, is water and how it affects those stainless steel tubes. If you set this right on the ground, water's going to pool. I mean, I look in my backyard as the snow melts away, right? And I've got puddles everywhere. Getting that thing up off the ground using a pan, it's so valuable to be able to allow water to escape and do what it needs to do. You know what, Randy? We haven't even had a chance to talk about covering your fire pits, especially for us up here in the north during the winter months. We haven't got the dive into ignition systems because there is electricity involved, so that needs to be a part of the plan so that you can run the proper electrical while you're running the plumbing. It's very valuable because I did have a customer who changed.
Yeah, there's several different ways to operate the fire pit. And like you mentioned, different ways of covering depending on your build. So there are several different options there. Almost feel that we need to do a part 3.
A part 3. Part 3 might be coming because we could talk even pans more, and we could talk ventilation as well. It's one of the things where we see amazing masons. They do such good work, man. Our landscape architects we work with, and they have all of this fantastic block work, and there's zero ventilation in it. And to tell somebody who's such a wonderful artisan that, hey, you're going to need to cut some holes in that, right? It's never a good or easy conversation to have. So having that planned out, so valuable. All right, so we're going to do a part 3. But as always, if you have questions, comments, even concerns to our listeners, if you heard us say something and you go, what are they talking about? Call us. Let us know. Shoot us a message. Get a hold of us in all of the different ways you can get a hold of us here at Woodland Direct. And we'd love to talk to you. We are here as a bridge for our pros. A lot of people buying online nowadays. And we want to make sure that we're still getting those folks in contact with their local pros to do these installs, to walk through the process with us. We work directly with the pro and the end user so that everyone can have an amazing experience around fire. So for this episode, Randy, thank you so much for being here, brother. I always appreciate you so much and your expertise, man.
Oh, my pleasure. It's always fun burning up the mic with you there, Mr. Mike.
So until we burn up the mic next time, I am Mike Vennard, and this is Randy Mowry. We appreciate you guys listening, and we'll see you on the flip side.